We're here high above Oxford, and we're standing on the oldest building in Oxford. It's a Saxon tower. It actually predates all the scholastic history. It's back in the Saxon period of English history, and around this settlement formed what was to become the greatest academic center in England, and later, at certain centuries, in all of Europe. But it's here that we find some of the greatest figures from church history, from the bringing of the English Bible to us, and of modern day evangelism. What you see right behind me is the Wesley Memorial Church. Now, the Wesleys came here, John and Charles, and they actually went to school right there at Christ Church, and you can see the Tom Tower right there. After studying there, Charles went on into his songwriting ministry, writing hundreds and thousands of hymns, but John Wesley went right there to Lincoln College. And during the time of his stay both at Christ Church and Lincoln, they formed what we know from church history as the Holy Club. And a third member joined them, John Wesley, Charles Wesley, and George Whitefield. Now, George Whitefield was from Pembroke College, which is right over to the right of Christ Church. And those three, as well as 7 others that were part of the original Holy Club, would come right here to where this Saxon Tower, where I'm standing. This was connected to the Bocardo prison. At first, this is where all the petty thieves and paupers were kept until they repaid their debts. But later on, after those early days, this is the prison where Latimer and Ridley and Cranmer were kept before their horrific death by fire, being burned at the stake. So this tower we're in is just kind of a central illustration of all the different ministry that went on in Oxford. That Wesley Church shows what happened through the Wesleys' evangelism in the 18th century. What started with Wycliffe and then later with Tyndale just blossomed into what Wesley and Whitefield saw of the heart desire of the English people for the gospel. Once they were reading the Bible in their own language, once they were hearing the gospel preached, and then could look into Tyndale's translation from the Greek and Hebrew into English, their hearts were moved. In fact, many accounts from church history tell us that people would stand weeping as they heard the Wesleys preach, and as they heard George Whitefield preach, as they heard the gospel of hope and salvation and forgiveness and a purpose for life in the very difficult days of 18th century England. But that Wesley Memorial Church is just a reminder of Methodism as it spread out in the 18th century, influencing lives on both sides of the Atlantic, both in the American colonies as well as here, across, as we found, John Wesley's ministry of 25,000 miles on horseback went to every major town and most villages of England. All that right here in Oxford, all that right here from the Saxon Tower, all that from the heartbeat of 18th century evangelism and of 17th century King James Bible translation. In fact, right to the left of Lincoln College, you can see right over there is the Merton Chapel. And the Merton Chapel, if you remember from our lesson there, is where Henry Saville oversaw the translation of the New Testament, the 4 Gospels, Acts, and the book of Revelation, and the launch of the King James Bible, the Bible that went and crossed the entire earth in the English world as the British Empire took the gospel with them everywhere they conquered. All but 11 nations on earth were touched by the gospel through the Bible translated right here and through the efforts of these great pioneers in church history. What a blessing to stand here in the Saxon Tower right above the North Tower Church as we remember all that God was doing and has continued to do here in Oxford.